Hello, souls and demons, and welcome back to the show. For today's episode, I have two stories. The first one being Fool's Gold, and the second one being Foot and Mouth, both written by Cornconic. And we have Fool's Gold coming up first, so sit back, grip your seats, and enjoy the show. Here they come, around the corner, sliding into the driveway in their family sedan. They're back from the market. The father's pockets no doubt lined with fresh 50s. The tires roll easily along the gravel, and I pray that lying somewhere in that collection of pebbles and stones is a glass shard, or a rock sharp enough to pierce the tires. My hopes are dashed as the car slows to a stop, the engine fading to silence. The youngest one, the boy, gets out and hurries to the front door. "No need to rush," the father proclaims as he strolls outwards in a warm winter coat, his fingers escaping the clamp of the slammed door behind him. Out comes the wife, wearing a thick cardigan, and behind her walks the little girl in a frilly woolen hat, sucking on her thumb. I concentrate as hard as I can on the feeling of the girl's teeth sliding up against the skin of her finger in her mouth, peeling it open like fruit as she trips and falls face first into the ground. I visualize it, taste the blood in my mouth, project it onto the child. The front door clicks shut behind them. I curse silently and close the blinds. Hunger stabs through my body as I stick my hands outwards towards the dying fireplace. I feel my extremities turning numb as another icy chill blows through the hole in the roof. A chipped bowl sits on the crack above the fire. Lukewarm broth for dinner again, it seems. Just like yesterday, and the day before that. Suddenly a noise. I rush back over to the window. It's music. The family's shadows flicker across the walls as they dance to an upbeat tune. I grasp a piece of rubble from the window ledge and fantasize about throwing it through their living room window. The satisfaction would be immense. The immediate screams of the mother, followed by the wailing of the children, and the sheer confusion of the father as he scrambles to his feet from his armchair, the broken glass crinkling under his slippers. I scowl and slink back to the window. An ugly field of greenish-brown glares back at me, insulting me with its mere presence. Its surface is dry and scabby, with a flock of hungry birds pecking at the soil and the hope of a quick meal. My eyes scan along the grassy patches, checking for any slight disturbance in the dull colors, any hint of yellow. I thought I saw one the other day, a gleaming nugget lying on the earth. I sprinted towards it, eyes as wide as saucers, when a patch of loose soil dislodged my footing and sent me tumbling head over heels. By the time I had scrambled back to my feet, the nugget was gone, and in its place was a dead squirrel, its insides burst open. I looked around, but the family was nowhere to be seen. Those bastards. They were probably sniggering to themselves as I shambled back to my house, the nugget clenched within the family's greedy fist. I spent most of my day spying on them, sometimes sneaking up for a closer look. I've only been spotted a few times by the youngest son, but they always just dismiss it as him seeing things, an overactive imagination as they put it. Sometimes he catches me staring from the window. Other times, it's when I'm up close in the bushes. He reacts the same every time, whimpering pathetically at first, then running back inside the house or hiding somewhere where he thinks I can't see him. Little wimp. I overhear their conversations a lot. They must know I'm nearby, because they only talk about mundane topics that they know I wouldn't be interested in. The father talks about his job sometimes, but I know it's only a guise for how they truly make their money. He drives a few miles away to sell the amount they stole from the previous day, while the children get to work, pilfering the newly emerged pickings under the command of the mother. I tried everything. I stayed up countless nights watching the land like a hawk. I dug pits 10 feet deep, trying to distinguish between a mole hole and a tunnel, scratched through by the ground by an 8-year-old boy. I checked my rainwater bucket for hallucinogens and watched the skies for any potential airdrops. Nothing. How they continue to get away with it every night used to baffle me. I had always assumed they must have had access to state-of-the-art technology, the kind of stuff someone like me could never dream of. Of course, I never bothered to introduce myself. They pretend that I don't exist, that the house opposite their luxury abode is abandoned. I've heard the mother talk of saving up the money to seize the land ownership and renovate the place themselves. That bitch. But they know I'm here. They must. They know I can't contact the authorities to confront them on their burglary, or they would surely inquire into my state of living. Squatting is a harsh word, but I imagine that's what most would call it. It never made much sense to me. This house is old, falling into disrepair. I can't waste any time tending to its upkeep, lest I sacrifice my safety and the hands of those brutes. The second I drop my guard, they'll surely come for me. Drive me out and force me to live out on the country roads like some sort of animal. No, I can't let that happen. I'll die before they force me out of here. It was my father who told me about this place. He spoke of it upon his deathbed, enlightened me of its potential, told me and only me it was the source of his well-amounted wealth. The rest of my family wouldn't believe me, neither would the nurses or the doctors. They said that he was just confused, that his ramblings were a byproduct of dementia, a condition of which he had been suffering as of late. But I saw past their lies. I knew that in that brief moment of clarity, he was onto something. Something big and promising. When I ran away, I saw my own missing posters for a few months afterward. I tore one off of the telephone pole it was stapled to once, just to get a good look at it. It had all my details on, my hair, my eye color, even a note saying I had mental illness. Can you believe their nerve? Making up something like that just to get a few extra pity points. It's sickening. One day I'll go back and show them how wrong they were. One day. The rustling of faraway trees in the wind snaps me out of my daydream. Sounds like there's a storm coming. I shiver and tiptoe to the musty table in the center of the room. I can't believe it took me this long to figure out how they did it. To think how accidental it was, too. I learnt of their secret by pure chance. They had this horrible mangy mutt, an ugly pit bull, that would occasionally sniff around the building. I had to hide whenever it came near, or else it would bark and shout and prompt one of the parents to bring it back home again. Well, one day, I was feeling particularly moody, and there it went, sniffing around the field as per usual, and I had had enough. It didn't take long. I just crept up on it from behind and gave it a quick whack over the head with a rusty shovel. It dropped like a stiff brick, and I dragged it back inside to cook up for dinner. At first, I started slicing little pieces off and sticking them on the fire. But that's when I saw it. A teensy little glimmer in the flesh, reflecting the light of the moon, shining in through one of the windows. I peeled open the wound a little deeper and found an entire chunk of gold poking through its body. I could barely contain myself. I grabbed a pocket knife from one of the kitchen drawers and sliced its belly open. And what did I find? It was stuffed to the brim with gleaming gold pieces. I remembered staring in shock for what felt like hours, for weeks and weeks. I had racked my brain trying to come up with a solution for the family's thefts. And now, that solution was staring me in the face with its milky, lifeless eyes. They were using the dog as a fucking courier, stuffing it with pilfered gold and, presumably, waiting for it to shit it back out again. Their ingenuity was proven. I'll give them that. I scooped it all out and stashed it away underneath the floorboards. I haven't touched it since. As for the body, I stomped on its head a few times and left it sitting outside their front doorstep. The littlest one found it first and gave me the biggest laugh of my life when I saw her stupid face contort and start bawling. Of course, they weren't really sad about the dog. They were sad about the profits they had lost. But they did a damned good job of pretending that they were. They even made a little grave for it in their back garden. Its name was Fido, apparently. The father mentioned something about it being the fault of a fox or a wolf, but I'm pretty sure he knew it was me. It was a message, after all, a way of me saying that I had cracked their secret, that I knew what they were up to. I thought I had put a stop to it once and for all, that they would have no choice but to move away and leave me to my lonesome, now that I had halted their primary source of income. But they adapted. Those clever bastards adapted. My gold was still nowhere to be found. The field was bare. I knew for a fact that they hadn't bought a new dog, so what could it have been? Well, I have a theory. The parents have been pushing the little boy to get closer to the house, to build up his confidence. I saw him playing nearby just the other day, with a couple of sticks. What's that got to do with anything, you may ask? Well, if they could smuggle gold through a dog's body, they could surely do the same with a child's, right? Alright, and here is the second story, Foot and Mouth. Hannah and Joey walked happily down the path, laughing and chatting like little children. "Hey, look!" Joey exclaimed, pointing a finger at a nearby farmhouse. It stood just on the cusp of a woodland area, obscured by a cluster of willow trees. The windows were greasy with dirt and grime, and the house's wooden exterior had been worn by the elements. But there were fresh footsteps in the mud, and a single light on in one of the bedrooms. A small field of sheep sat quietly in front of the property, seemingly undisturbed. "That's where old Jimmy lives. The guy with the crooked eye," said Hannah, Do you remember the group of kids that went missing around here? Well, I heard he ate them and buried their skeletons in that field. I wouldn't be surprised. He's a total creep. I heard he set a whole flock of cattle on fire and let them loose across the countryside. He's crazy like that, apparently. I'll give you $5 if you go over there and knock on the door, Hannah challenged with a mischievous grin. Joey sniggered excitedly, considering the idea. Nah, he responded with a dismissive wave. He's not worth the trouble. Let's check out the field. Maybe we can find some skeletons of our own. Are you crazy? I was only joking about the $5. That old coot'll probably shoot us if we get close enough. We'll be fine. He never even comes out of the house anymore. The worst he can do is yell at us. All right, if you're sure, Hannah muttered, still somewhat uncomfortable with the proposal. For a second, she swore she saw a pale silhouette in one of the farmhouse's windows. But within a moment, it had vanished. The pair shared another crude laugh at Jimmy's expense, and they strolled onwards towards the field. The smell of fresh soil grew slowly stronger as they reached the splintered gate. Just before Joey could place a hand on its rough surface, Hannah stopped, holding him back with her hand. There's something here, she said, gesturing to a beaten signpost. Warning, foot and mouth. Keep out, it read in faded painted letters. Hannah narrowed her eyes a little. Isn't that some sort of disease? I don't want to come down with anything. Joey sighed, with an exaggerated roll of his eyes. Humans can't get foot and mouth, dummy. Only animals, we're fine. Are you sure? Why would they? Joey tutted and walked through the gate, cutting her off. Mildly irked, she trailed meekly behind him. The sheep awkwardly trotted away whenever the pair got close, backing up into a corner and baaing timidly. They seemed only to gather around the field's edges, leaving a sizable spot in the middle devoid of droppings and overgrown with uneaten grass. That's funny, Joey said. They don't look infected with anything. Hannah paused suddenly, noticing a group of fissures in the ground. Thick, lengthy fractures were split through the dirt, like a broken window. A strange feeling washed over her as she ran her fingers along the cracks. They felt almost warm, as if they were alive. I don't like this. Something's wrong. This place just feels off. Hannah spoke nervously, glancing back and forth at the sheep. Was it her imagination, or were they all just staring? Not eating, not tending to their young, just staring at her and Joey. Joey looked over his shoulder, approaching Hannah with a smug expression that masked his growing anxiety. Stop being such a baby, they're just sheep. It's not really the sheep I'm worried about. Joey noticed it too. Dead silence, completely out of the blue. Not even the tweet of a bird or the rustle of wind along the grass could be heard in the void of noise. It was like time had frozen. Joey's face turned deathly pale, and with wide eyes, he pointed down at the grass. A single human finger lay upturned in the soil, shriveled up and covered in flies. The skin was flaky and bloodless, and the nail was hanging loosely by a small strip of tissue. missing kids," Joey finally spoke, frozen in horror. Hannah saw a face from the corner of her eye and gasped. It was old Jimmy, watching from the farmhouse window, with his crooked eye and an anticipating smile on full display. Without warning, a gargantuan foot fell from the sky, crushing Joey like a cockroach before soaring back out of sight. Hannah screamed, only managing to turn back towards the gate before a huge mouth broke through the cracks in the soil, swallowing her whole and disappearing back into the earth. Jimmy stared from the farmhouse window, struggling to contain his laughter. With a wicked smile, he added 2 more tally marks to the blackboard in his hands. "Number 26 and number 27. Never gets old," he remarked, leaning back in his rocking chair. "Never gets old."